that child does not know the difference between what I just did is bad versus I am bad. And so now what you've done as the parent is you've told your child they are bad, even whether you meant to or not. It's what you did. And your child is going to internalize that and they're going to think they are bad. Welcome to the Relational Parenting Podcast. I'm Jennifer Hayes, a parent coach and 20-year child care veteran. Each week, I sit down with my own father, Rick Hayes, and discuss the complicated issues that parents face today, as well as some of the oldest questions in the book. From the latest research and the framework of my relational parenting method, we offer thought-provoking solutions to your deepest parenting struggles. Or, in other words, how to parent your kids without losing your mind or traumatizing theirs. Added bonuses include intergenerational wounding discussions and guest childcare experts. We will also start taking your parenting questions in episode 5, so be sure to comment with your biggest questions or email me directly at jenny@jennyb.co. Let's get started. Welcome back, you guys. Okay, so this week we are diving right in to one of the most common and most harmful tools I see used in parenting: shame. This is a huge topic, and we definitely go over the 1 hour mark on this one, but we don't even come close to covering all of it. Shame has crept into our very DNA, and more often than not, it starts in our own homes. Throughout this episode, my dad and I also talk about the alternatives to using shame and guilt to teach our children how to be good people. There are so many juicy nuggets in here. I can't wait to see what your takeaways are. Welcome back. This is the Relational Parenting Podcast, and we are back with the topic of shame and guilt being used in parenting. And so we're going to talk about different situations that shame and guilt are being used in and ways that you may not even know you're using them. And then we're also going to talk about the alternatives to using shame and guilt in the relational pyramid that I talked about last week.
There you go.
So we kind of dove in a little bit there and threw out some examples of, we were talking about sharing. So let's back up a little bit and go back to shame, the different ways that shame shows up. Shame is one of the biggest issues across the board of existence, not just in parenting, not just in raising kids, not just in children, not just in adults, but shame across the board, every culture, every country, every whatever of existence. Shame is at such a deep rooted core inside of us.
Kids.
It is, and it's it's a means of controlling anyone, and most of us, a lot of us, have been raised with shame, and so we grow into adults who have shame, and there's all of this self-healing and therapy and inner work and all of the buzzwords going around, and all of that's wonderful, and I've done a lot of that, and we need it, but we if we were raised without it, we wouldn't. And we wouldn't just have we wouldn't just have this layer. It's like our foundation is the bottom layer that builds up who we are. The foundation we're built on is shame. And so the filter everything goes through in our lives is shame, and perceived morality. And so, is this person looking at me and judging me? Am I this? Am I too mean? Am I too nice? Am I too demanding? Am I too whatever it is? We're constantly self-evaluating, and we don't feel worthy, and we are constantly trying to achieve something, some image of worthiness to ourselves and others.
Unworthiness is a big deal. Yeah.
And so there's just all this shame and shoulds and at the base of our existence. And so that's something I just wanted to start with this topic, because it starts in childhood. It starts with how we're parented. Everything does, right? Your first interactions on earth are with your
Yep.
parents. And
That
so,
low-level firmware
um,
stuff people get in their heads. I wonder if that not uniquely American, but American and British people talk about how, uptight we are. That's not the word I was thinking compared. I wonder if maybe America, um, gets more of that, does more of that than some other countries, you know? It'd be
I would
interesting.
disagree.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just curious.
There are a lot of Asian cultures that
Puritanical.
rely heavily on guilt and shame.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I get
I
that
have
too.
a lot of close friends who are first generation Americans. So they come from
From other
Korea,
cultures. Yeah.
Japan,
Pacific
Ethiopia,
Rim.
and their parents brought them here from their home country. So their parents were born and raised in that country, and then they bring them here and they raise them with that culture, but inside of a new culture where their kids are going to an American school and learning English and
Yeah.
learning different customs and ways of doing things and different ways of thinking about things. And like their parents' version of right and wrong is very different from the kids' version of right and wrong. But
Mhm.
I know one teenager in particular specifically that I mentored several years ago. She, I mean, her entire teenagehood, and that's when I met her. But I know from her own mouth reporting that even before teenage years, her
Mhm.
existence was torture because she was constantly everything she wanted to do and be was constantly wrong in the eyes of her parents.
Oh,
And
yeah, that's no fun.
it was a cultural it was cultural expectations that
Hmm.
underlied those
And that
issues.
might
And
conflict, culture from another culture when you're like, I mean, sometimes people come and they kinda live in communities, right? What am I trying to think of? Like, the North is kinda known for Swedish and Northern European settlers, you know? And,
yeah,
so there's a certain amount of a bubble within a bigger bubble, within a culture. And so
yeah,
having expectations of one culture and then the kids are out in school and relationships with other people and boy, you know, there's norms there. So yeah, that could make a lot of conflict, and that would be particularly complicated.
yeah. So I think as Americans, I don't know if we fall somewhere in the middle. There's also a lot of Hispanic families that I have known where shame and guilt is it's like there's like this toxic loyalty to the family, to like you're a you stick together no matter what. No one can penetrate the family.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
and
particular
there's guilt
loyalty
and
or something.
shame in that. And there's a healthy there's a place for healthy loyalty, of course, inside family. And but there's also toxicity and abuse. And if you're, I've witnessed abuse happening inside of a family, and like not physical but emotional abuse, mental
Oh yeah,
abuse, guilt and shame, and guilt
oh
trips
yeah,
and manipulation. And then but then
yeah,
the adult child of the manipulator
yeah.
defends their parent and says, "Oh, they're just this, or well, they're just that, or they were raised this way, or they're right. I should be more loyal, or I should have whatever for my
Whatever
mom
it
when she
is.
asked me to do it." And I'm like, "You're
Yeah,
35 with a wife and your own children to take
yeah,
care of, and
yeah.
your mother didn't. It wasn't like it was something like so minute that she asked for, but just wanted to see if she could get you away from your wife and kids to do it for her." Like,
Is it a manipulation? Sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Is it healthy?
So
That's my
so
favorite word.
there's
Is it healthy?
yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a yeah, so that kind of thing, you know, culture within a culture kind of conflicts. That's not only a childhood thing where we're programming our kids basically, or you know, teaching them norms. Is expectations of taking care of parents in their old age and that kind of thing. That varies from culture to culture, and so yeah,
Well, and
we're gonna end up.
taking
We'll get a lot of comments. It'd be interesting to see comments from people from other cultures and stuff. Because we are American,
yeah,
we don't have that much. We have experience from outside of other cultures. It'll be
yeah,
interesting to see what people from inside those cultures have to say.
right. Well, yeah. Well, and there's nuances inside of
Absolutely,
everything. But
absolutely.
there's a difference between taking care of your parents in their old age and valuing, like, okay, my parents raised me and loved me and provided for me, and now I want to be able to do the same for them when they can't take care of themselves. There's a difference between having a value of taking care of your family versus this toxic guilt trip manipulation of a parent who is perfectly capable of doing these things themselves,
Yeah,
but is playing a game to see if they still matter to you more than your spouse or your
yeah,
partner or your own kids. Like, they
yeah,
still want to be the most important person in your life. And
yeah.
unfortunately, that's not the role of a parent, is to be the most important person in your life for your entire life. Like,
It's like empty nesting on steroids. It's
yeah,
not necessarily a conscious manipulation or unconscious. It's just an expectation. Maybe it's legitimate somewhere else in the world where life is structured, but in America, you're kind of expected to go on and not do that and stick your parents in a home or something. It's yeah, all kinds
well,
of
so
conflicts,
again, I'm not talking about
values.
I'm not talking about nursing home versus I'm not talking about elderly parents who cannot take care of
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah, but people who can take care of themselves.
That's going to be a personal ability and financial
Right,
ability, and there's so many factors depend on your personal ability to take care of your parents when they are no longer able to take care of themselves. And I don't
right,
want
right.
to
I get it.
talk about different cultures and that value. What I'm talking about is parents who are perfectly capable relying on and putting the burden of their worth
Yeah,
on their adult children
yeah,
to supply, to need them, to
yeah.
continuously need them and do things for them, even though they're building their own life.
Yeah, once the children have left the nest and are doing okay, they're not content to be a backstop. They wanna be there all day, every day, taking energy from the kids.
Right. Right. Like, parents are supposed to launch their children into the world. Like, I've raised you, I've given you a foundation, and now you're meant to go
Mhm,
build your own life.
mhm,
And but there, in some cultures, there's this pull to, I still come home for holidays and I still talk to my family.
mhm.
I'm talking to my parent right now. Like, you still are in relationship with your parents, but you are
Right.
building your own life. And there are parents who just do this. They
Yeah,
want their kid to be with them and on them and taking care of them, and or finding a way to, I don't know. There's like
and
that.
you and using shame as a tool to accomplish it
Right.
long past, childhood
So let's take this back to childhood, because we're here to teach current parents how
parenting.
to do things differently, and current parents of children. There are lots of parents of
Yeah.
adults. So parents of young children right now, ways that you may or may not be aware of using guilt and or shame in your parenting to get your kid to do something, or to teach your kid, what may be an important lesson, but we're using guilt and shame to teach it instead of empathy and understanding to
Right.
teach it. And so, an example that comes to mind for me is using very young children with a younger sibling or with another child on the playground. So I'm talking like 2, 3, 4 years old.
Mhm.
Things that are very normal for that age group is biting, hitting, kicking. But these are things that
Learn the restraint. Yeah, yeah.
to us as adults are absolutely forbidden and unacceptable. So we then see our 2, 3, and 4-year-old do that, and we go like we want to like put a stop to it, and that like don't ever do that again. And unfortunately, at that developmental age and stage, it's completely and totally normal. And if we use shame to shut it down, or we tell like, no, like you don't get to do that, and don't hit your sister. You're going to hurt her. Do you want to hurt your sister? That's so mean.
That's
Saying
bad.
things
Yeah.
like, or yeah, say that's bad. You don't do
Just
that.
generically evil.
Right. That child does not know the difference between what I just did is bad versus I am bad. And so now what you've done as the parent is you've told your child they are bad, even whether you meant to or not. It's what you did. And your child is going to internalize that, and they're going to think they are bad.
Yeah.
And the more a child thinks they're bad, the more they're going to do the bad things, because that's what they are.
That becomes like their identity.
Exactly. And so, you know, and there's also there so many people don't know that that's normal. It hasn't gotten to the general public that those things are developmentally normal, that is how a young child moves frustration out of their body. So everything comes back to emotions, right? So once our physical needs are met, we then feel emotions, and emotions, I can't remember who it was that I was listening to that defined the word emotion. But emotions are energy, energy in motion. And so energy comes and goes, energy moves, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It simply converts or moves or whatever. And so emotions are the feelings that rise up in our body, and you can feel every single one of them in your body. If anyone has ever done any kind of body work, or even just stopped and taken a breath when you're angry, you know that you feel emotions in your body. And if you can imagine your adult body being unable to contain those emotions without yelling or crying or punching the wall, imagine a 2-year-old feeling an emotion just as big as yours, but in a body a fifth the size.
And experienced, right?
And with no prefrontal cortex to tell them that this
That's right.
when I do this, this is going to hurt somebody.
There's no valve there yet.
Right.
And that's what you do when they bite somebody, when a kid acts out like that, that's a teaching moment when they're doing that, and they're little. It's not, I guess I always go back to the teaching and trying to make kids more competent in whatever they're doing. You don't shame them into it. You go, yeah, well, we don't want to do that, and this is why. And if you can't control it, then we have to go do something else. And you just try to teach them and show them logical consequences, and eventually, because that's how they stop doing that. There has to be some training or some input from an authority figure, maybe to say, hey, nope, we're not. You can't do that here. We won't allow that. Not that you're doing anything unexpected. It's just, we're not going to allow that. You have to try to control that, develop that control.
Yeah. Telling a 2-year-old to control something is
You
not
don't
going
do it
to
with
be
words. I get it. I get that.
Well, even the phrase, if you can't control it, we're going to have to go do something else. Even that, like, that's unfair because they can't control it.
Okay.
So an example.
So would I just scoop them up and remove them from the situation?
No, if they hit, then you see, especially, if it's in public and it's another child, that makes things more complicated. So let's do an at-home. Let's do an at-home example. Would be you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Okay. They're in the living room playing with blocks or Lincoln logs or whatever. And maybe you're on the couch and you're on your phone, or you're reading a book, or you're just spacing out because the kids are playing quietly for a minute. Thank God.
That's right. They're too quiet now.
Right. And you're sitting there, the kids are playing on the floor, and then, all of a sudden 3-year-old reaches over and smacks 1-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. Our knee-jerk reaction is to launch into the middle of that and go, no. And our energy gets big very quickly. And
I
before you
like that
even
concept. Yeah.
before you even get to the verbal or physical correction
Hmm.
of the behavior, you first have to check your energy because you are having an internal reaction to what just occurred.
Yeah.
And for me, it's injustice.
Yeah.
That bigger 3-year-old child just assaulted my smaller 1-year-old
That's right. The
child.
bigger kid has to be more responsible. Absolutely.
And so
I get that.
your parent instinct will kick in even if it's your child versus your child, your other child. Your parenting instinct, your protective instinct will kick in seeing something like that. And so the first thing we have to do is pause in that response.
So that's like
Unless
being mindful, being intentional about
right.
you gotta go, okay, how do I want to deal with this?
And then you have to make your voice come out in
Yeah.
a tone that portrays that you are a regulated adult who can handle this situation
In a
because you are.
grown-up manner. You don't want to react from your child, or you don't want to do that knee-jerk thing. You got
Right.
to go,
You don't want to launch
okay.
off the couch with this like no energy. You need to quietly, you need to calmly put your phone down and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And then
Okay,
it's
children.
immediate curiosity. So you, depending on the severity of the situation, this is a 3-year-old who has with his hand hit a 1-year-old and stopped.
Yeah,
This
there's
is
no
not
brick involved or
right.
anything.
There's no knife, there's no weapon,
Yeah,
there's no 16-year-old beating up a 4-year-old. This
yeah,
is a very specific situation where we are responding this way.
yeah,
And it is that no one's life is in danger.
yeah,
And so 3-year-old reaches over and hits 1-year-old, maybe even screams at her or says, "That's mine," and or tries
yeah,
to rip a toy out of her hand.
yeah.
You've all been there, you know what we're talking about. So the first thing to do is regulate yourself and your voice. And so you're going to regulate your body, you're going to take a deep breath, you're going to tell yourself, "I can handle this." And then you're going to put down whatever you're doing and you're going to turn to your children. You're going to be like, "Hey," specifically the 3-year-old, you want to address the 3-year-old and you want to say, "Hey, what's going on? What
Yep.
happened?" Because so you want to regulate and then you want to lead with curiosity. Because if you
Okay.
lead with stop that
Hmm.
or judgment, your child is immediately going to recoil from you, and
Yeah.
they're not gonna want to talk about it. They're gonna get upset themselves and start
Become
crying
shame
themselves.
and yeah,
And then they'll immediately feel shame. And if you look at your child with judgment and shame, that's what they're going to feel, even if it doesn't
yeah,
come out of your mouth.
yeah.
So you're going to regulate, and then you're going to ask a question. "Hey, buddy, what's going on? What
What
happened?"
is going on? Yeah,
And then you're going to give that child a
I can
chance to
see that.
tell him what happened for him, which is it's going to be a feeling, promise,
Yeah,
or it's going to be she took my toy. And then you're going to fill in the feeling and you're going to say, "Oh man, that's frustrating." And you're going to empathize.
name it. Yeah,
So we're
yeah.
going to regulate, we're going to be curious, and then we're going to empathize. And all of those things have to happen before correction can happen, before real correction can happen, before real correction and teaching can happen, before that child is going to feel safe enough to hear
Hmm.
what you're teaching them. You
Hmm.
have to be calm, curious, and empathetic.
Exactly. If you upset, grown-ups, when they're upset, they don't think straight. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to regulate yourself. And then you also have to keep in mind when you're dealing with your child, you don't want to upset them because they're not going to get the lesson or whatever it is you're trying to communicate. If they're upset, you don't know. I mean, it's not like sometimes you don't want to upset them. You want to teach them. You want them to be able to absorb it. That's interesting. It also helps. I wish when you guys were younger that I'd had some of these principles floating around in my head a little more formal. So when you do that, okay, how am I going to react here? I had 2 or 3 principles. It's like, okay, calm and, the things you just named off there, something to rattle off in my head going, and then go in, and now I got to process. I'm not just doing it intuitively and hoping it works. It'd be nice to have some tools, little checklist, little bitty, little short checklists, because I have a little bitty, little short brain. But it's like, okay, yeah, go at it here. I don't have to remember a doctoral dissertation. Just a couple of, okay, here's how we want to go after. Here's how we're working on conflict with these kids at this age. And that would change as you get older. That's interesting. Yeah. Being mindful about it, being deliberate.
Well, and so children and dogs have a lot in common.
Yes, they do.
And one of the biggest things that they have in common, and that comparison is not meant to be derogatory. I know some people have a problem with that, but
I know.
That is a creature in our house that we have power over.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Yeah. And whatever it is in our environment that we have power over is going to respond to our energy. They're not going to create the energy in the house. They're going to respond to ours. And so my dog does not get hyped up and excited unless I get hyped up and excited.
Unless it senses you, yeah.
And your child is going to respond to your energy the same way. And so if you're coming off the couch and launching at them with this like anger and defensiveness, that child is immediately terrified.
Imagine somebody 3 or 4 times your size launching themselves at you and running up on you. Goliath. Right. It's like, oh my God, I hope they're not going to come kill me.
Exactly. That is exactly what your child is thinking. They're not conscious of it, but you are now a threat to their life. And they are completely shut down, and they're going to fall apart into what we would call a tantrum, or crying or screaming or running away from you or whatever.
Overload of the emotional system. Yeah.
Right. And it's a fear response, and it's a natural one, and it's a good one. It protects them.
Yeah. Lets their mom, let their dad know that something's going on. Yeah.
So I want to finish the example for the parents who are looking for like, okay, but how would the rest of that play out? So we regulate ourselves first, we respond with calmness, and then we ask a question. Curiosity. And then when that child reveals to us what happened or why it happened or the way they felt that something unjust happened to them or whatever, we then empathize. And we're that's not validating the behavior, but we're going to validate their feeling that caused the behavior.
Yeah.
So we're going to be like, oh, it's so frustrating when someone takes something away from you. And then we're going to, if you haven't already, you're going to get down on the floor with them. Try to get as low as you can to their level. You're sitting down. You're not towering over them. And as long, your child isn't still hitting, right? So everyone's bodies are calm. And you're going to say, man, that is so frustrating. How else or what else could you have done when she took that toy away from you?
Another question, getting them engaged and thinking of other possibilities, teaching them to stop and think. Yeah.
Instead of just, oh no, we do not hit. That is not okay. No, sir. You're going to go play over here now. And with immediate shame and punishment. That's not going to teach them anything.
Don't explain the morality of it. Yeah.
All they're going to feel is like shit. And they're going to think you're the one that made them feel like shit, and it's their sister's fault because their sister took the toy from them.
That's right.
I'll
get you later.
Talk about sibling rivalry. You want to know who causes sibling rivalry? Because it's not siblings.
That would be mom and dad. Yeah.
Sibling rivalry comes from how differently the children get treated based on age, size, etc.
That's a good point.
So we're avoiding a lot of shit here. Relationships are so complicated, y'all. So you're getting down on their level.
All by being regulated ourselves. Yeah.
You're getting down on their level, and you are asking, hey, buddy, that's so frustrating. What else could you have done when she took your toy instead of hitting her? What do you think? What do you think you could have done instead? And depending on how many conversations you've had with your child, they might come up with an answer themselves. They might not. But a couple of examples they might come up with themselves is, I could have just asked her to give it back to me. Or I could have come and told you. I could have come and gotten mommy. And either of those, perfectly acceptable. Some kids, some 3-year-olds will know the phrase, use my words. I could have used my words.
Could have used my words. Go
And
find somebody regulated.
There will also be children who start crying anyway because they know what they did was wrong and they didn't mean to hurt their sister, and they aren't capable yet of verbalizing to you a different option. They just feel bad. They still feel bad. The feeling has not moved. And so we're going to help them move through it. And we're going to continue to empathize, and we're going to ask them if they need a hug, and we're just going to sit with them while they're upset until the feeling passes. And then we're going to re-engage in this conversation. And we're going to say, if they're unable to come up with an answer themselves, that's fine. They're 3. Give them the answer. Give them some choices. This is where you're teaching. Next time, if Sissy takes your toy, could just say, hey, I was playing with that. Will you give that back, please?
Yep.
Or if you feel like you're going to hit Sissy because you're so upset, come get mommy. I'll help you.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And then a natural consequence, people, there are parenting voices out there being like, well, but he hit her, so he needs a consequence or he's not going to learn anything. And what I advocate for as a parent coach is natural consequences. Natural consequences are things that will naturally occur in a child's environment as a natural result of their behavior. And so if you think of it, if you take it out of a child's environment and put it into an adult's environment, if I were to hit my adult friend, if I were to reach out and smack my adult friend or husband or whatever, my natural consequence might be that they don't want to be my friend anymore.
Yep.
Or they're not going to talk to me for a while. Or we're going to have words and talk about it. Or in horrible cases, it's domestic violence, et cetera. We're not going to go there.
Smack you back.
It's irrelevant.
That's an unhealthy
or they're going to hit
option.
you back.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that situation, the natural consequence most often that I have witnessed is that 1-year-old no longer wants to play with 3-year-old. And so 1-year-old wants to either snuggle with mommy, be comforted,
get some attention,
get separate. Yeah, separate. At 1 year old, it's going to be snuggles or a snack. At that
but
age.
There's rarely a third party that runs in and smacks you when you're an adult.
Right. So there's not some random
party 2, party 3 doesn't come smack party 1.
Right. So, but the natural consequence then for the 3-year-old is that Sissy doesn't want to play with you anymore. So you guys were having fun on the floor, a lot, and I've witnessed this firsthand, and it's happened on the playground. So between non-sibling children on the playground, they're playing. One kid hits the other kid because hitting happens through excitement too. Kids get so excited, or they feel so much love. I've had a child hit me and then tell me, I'm sorry, I just love you. And it's a real thing. I feel that towards other children that call me auntie, that are in my life that I love, or towards my dogs when they're being so cute. I just squeeze my own fists because I clench my own teeth and they're just so cute. And it's like, imagine that feeling of love and cuteness in a 2-year-old's body. They don't know what to do with that. They're just going to move their hand. So we're on the playground. It's 2 children, non-siblings, and one reaches out and hits the other. Most often what's going to happen is that friend doesn't want to play with you anymore. That's your natural consequence. You don't need anything else on top of that. That is your natural life consequence for what you just did.
Yeah.
We don't need the shame and the guilt and God forbid the smacking or the timeout or whatever. Like, there's no reason for any of that, and none of that is going to teach your child anything.
At least not on a a onesie twosie kind of basis. That also sounds to me kind of like a healthy habit to teach your kids, which is if you're around the other side of what you're saying, or an older version is if you run into people who are verbally or physically abusive or something like that, it's good to say, okay, I don't necessarily want that in my life. And you learn to stay away from people like that can be depended upon to mistreat you in other ways, in any kind of way. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's your thing. But it's not my job to come smack you when you smack somebody else. It's my job to just leave you, stay out of arm's reach from you, don't not be your friend,
Exactly.
So that's kind of, that would be consistent with a good, healthy teaching going forward. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's two-sided, right? Because if your child is the one that got hit and you're consoling them or whatever, and they're like,
There
they
you go.
still want to play with that friend,
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay, go
Yeah.
play with your friend. If they hit you again, you need to come get me. Yeah. So shaming, that's something, that's the hitting and biting. Those are major behaviors. And that's just one tiny example of how shame and guilt are used in raising children. But that's kind of a glaringly obvious example.
Well, you start with easy ones to define. I'm sure there's more complicated ones
Well, and
out
so
there,
there's these, as you dig in more and more to the emotional and mental health part of our foundation, right, that we talked about in our first episode. We have the bottom of our pyramid is the physical needs are being met. And then the second tier is emotional and mental. And then we have social and cognitive. And so we're in this emotional, mental tier of our developmental pyramid. And there are microaggressions, for lack of a better word,
I've
that
heard that
we
before. Yeah.
have towards our children, and microaggressions in the way that we use shame and guilt as thought processes that we're teaching our children. And it might just be in passing. And one of those is you give your 3-year-old the spaghetti and broccoli that you made for dinner, and they don't want to eat all of it. And you go, there's starving children in Africa. You need to eat your food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like little things that we just say because either we were raised on those phrases or we picked them up somewhere. But the little ones that you get in this habit of saying them as a response to a situation that occurs, daily and constantly.
Yeah.
And we all do it, and we all do it in different ways, in different settings. But you get that it's like autopilot. It's this auto response of like you're just trying to get your kid to eat their fucking dinner.
To eat.
Like,
Because they're going to be hungry in an hour if they don't. I mean, really what you're trying to do is get them to stop and focus and just, watch how much they're eating. And, it turns into trying to lay a guilt trip on them. Yeah. Shame's a pretty common way to try to control people emotionally.
Well, and then, everybody wonders where eating disorders come from. And that's a big one in childhood, because you want your child to get the nutrition that they need. And you as the adult know better of whether they like the broccoli or not, or broccoli is new and scary and you just want them to try it. And your intentions aren't bad, but your method is.
Yeah.
And
method's not great. Yeah.
And if you create shame as early as 2 and 3 and 4 years old in your child around mealtime, just multiply that by 30 years and
interest,
like
compounding interest,
shame eating, comfort eating, like forced eating, binge eating, not eating. It's all, and even as someone, I've never struggled with an eating disorder, but I've struggled with diets and my thought process around eating and feeling bad for eating different things or feeling less worthy or whatever. And the thing that I finally figured out, and I'm still working on it and will probably be working on it forever, is I eat foods that make my body feel good, which means I don't get bloated and gassy and feel like I just need to lay down
Yeah.
or like whatever. Like I
Take it
feel
easy on the cheeseburgers.
right. Well, but there are certain times that I need a cheeseburger,
A
like a
cheeseburger once in a while is good for the soul.
well, it's not even that. It's like women and hormones, like we need beef
Yeah,
or
yeah,
iron. You can get it from other sources. For me, it's a
yeah,
burger.
yeah.
But there are times like that I literally can tell I'm low on iron just from
Mm.
years of like tuning in and cycle
Mhm.
syncing and things like
Mhm.
that. But our bodies have needs. Our bodies know better than our minds do. And if we
Yeah,
don't teach that to our children from a young age to listen to their body when it comes to food,
that's the key,
that's
I'll
not the
bet.
same as encouraging your child to try new things because
Yeah.
everything is new to them and everything is going to be scary until they try it a few times.
Another
And some
topic,
kids
yeah.
need to try it 12 times.
Yeah.
But letting your child choose what they do and don't like and eating according to that and according to what their
Mhm.
stomach is telling them, I'm full or we don't like this, their
Mhm.
taste buds are going to give them information. Their nose smelling things is giving them information, and
Yeah,
listening to their tummy when it's full is giving them information. And we need
yeah,
them to learn that young and encourage that versus you
yeah,
need to eat 3 more bites of this before you can get down from the table.
yeah, yeah.
Why? Okay, you know
So
they're
if a
going to be hungry in
kid
an hour. Let them be hungry in an hour.
I was just gonna
Pack
say,
snacks.
so when the kid, they're just anxious to go play, or they're upset, or they're wanting to go watch a TV show or play a game, I guess would be a thing now. And they don't eat. They're too excited. They're too emotional to sit down and think ahead that, no, I'm not full. I just don't want to be here. I want to be with the game. And so if you let them down, if you don't coerce them via some means to eat 3 more bites and they come back hungry, what's the healthy is it healthy to teach them to think about what they're eating and are you really full and pay attention to your body, or you let them be hungry after a while, or do you keep healthy snacks around? How do you negotiate that on a day-to-day, I got better things to do schedule as a parent?
Well, so yeah, obviously it's situational, but
Yeah.
my general answer that will work in most situations is two things. The first one's a question. When you are super excited, like so excited you can feel it in your body, you can feel it
Mm-hmm.
in your stomach. Are you going to sit down and eat a meal?
Yeah, that's not the best time to do anything thoughtfully, is when you're
You're
super
also,
excited,
studies show
super
you're not going to
emotional.
digest it either.
Yeah. Hmm.
You're going to get a tummy ache if you force yourself to eat when you're super excited or super anxious or super whatever.
Okay.
Your body, your mind. So I've been to a couple of nutritionists who told me digestion starts up here.
Hmm.
If you
Mind
look
body.
at your food, if you look at your food and you don't feel excited to eat what's on your plate, you're not going to digest it well.
Hmm.
It doesn't
Okay.
matter if you chew it 1,700 times before you swallow it so that it's super tiny and broken down and easy for your stomach to break down more and send through
Mm-hmm.
your intestines. If
Mm-hmm.
up here it's disgusting, you are not going to digest that food well. You are not
That
going to
kind of
get the vitamins and minerals from it. You're going to get a tummy ache. It's not going to go well.
Yeah. Well, there's a
So if your
reason your brain's
child,
involved, and it's kind of interesting. I've seen articles about listen to your gut and that kind of stuff. They are discovering more ties between your brain and your gut.
yeah.
Now, that's interesting. That makes sense in that context.
So if your child is so excited about something happening that they are incapable of physically sitting down and eating without being scared, coerced, or manipulated into it,
Mm-hmm.
then okay, your meal will be here when you're hungry. and they don't get to run away and go play some. That's how you negate the like, well, maybe they just want to eat ice cream, and so they're just going to wait to eat until it's ice cream time, and they're going to go play this game, right? Because then it's like my child's thinking ahead and they're just trying to get out of eating food. And so you say, okay, like, you're so excited. I see how excited you are. Like, if right now you're too excited to eat, that's fine. Maybe sister's eating, and you like, we're still not gonna play the game till sister's done eating. So you can either sit here and try to, like, we can take some deep breaths and you can try to get your body ready to eat. Or if you really want to wait, you need to go move your body. I'll get you out of your chair. You can go to the living room and play with the blocks, or you could go set up the game, or whatever it is.
I like that. You can sit here until that's fine, but we're eating dinner now. And so we're going to eat dinner together before we move on to something else. You're not confined by a child's attention span, or whatever, or emotional
Well, and
state.
and obviously this is all age dependent and situation dependent. If it's family dinner, right? I'm thinking like breakfast with a stay-at-home mom and another child in the room, you've got a lot of flexibility there. If it's family dinner and there's 4 kids and 2 adults at the table and one child is too excited to eat, that's when you give options.
Yeah.
And you say, even if you, the adult, know you're going to be hungry in an hour, but they're so excited to do whatever that they don't want to eat, that's fine. But you're going to sit at the table with the rest of us while we eat, because we can't go do that thing until all of us eat.
Which kind of leads to regulating. And I like that.
So it does. It forces them to regulate themselves. They're going to have to sit there, and they're 9 times out of 10 going to calm themselves down, because they're like, oh, okay, well, I just have to sit here anyway. And they may pick at their food and they may not. And you can even offer, like, if you really don't want to eat, do you want me to grab you a book and you can sit there and read or talk to us at the table? Like, these are your options. It's dinner time. You don't have to put food in your mouth, but we're also not going to go do anything else right now.
That's right. Just engage them in conversation and get them.
Well, and do it without shame.
Get them calmed down. Yeah.
Do it without being annoyed. It's so easy to take this tone of like, you don't have to eat, but you're not going to go play either.
That's right.
Or, God,
making it a punishment.
Fine. Or you don't have to eat, but like, the rest of us are eating, so just sit there and be quiet.
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference between, I see how excited you are, and I know that's really hard to eat when you're excited, and that's okay. I'm excited too. But we're all eating right now. It's dinner time. And so we're all going to sit here at the table together. You don't have to eat right now. If you don't feel like your tummy can eat right now, that's okay. Would you like a book, or do you just want to sit here and talk to talk to us, or whatever?
This is our chance to eat. I can't fix another meal in an hour, right?
Well, and so that's when you also say, like, when you're hungry, when your tummy does feel hungry, this is what's for dinner. And there are no snacks. There's nothing else that you can eat until you eat your dinner.
Yeah, you get your snack after you eat your dinner. You don't get a snack if you don't eat dinner. Yeah.
So when your tummy's ready to eat, I'll reheat your dinner or whatever it is. So it's dinner time. We're going to sit here. There's, or you can have a book. Those are your 2 options. And your dinner will be here when you are hungry.
Yeah. And here's your dinner in a baggie for later. Doesn't that look better than it does now?
No, that's also manipulation and coercion.
I know.
But
being comic relief.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, there are so many ways to handle. It's like the minute that something is smaller and less powerful than us, we know better and want to force
exert
out of good intention. We want to have a healthy kid. We want to make sure they learn things, but through force and coercion and shame and guilt they're not going to learn that way.
Yeah.
And just because we know better doesn't mean that we actually do. Yeah. And 2, doesn't mean that we get to take away the autonomy, choice, and safety of that being.
Mm-hmm. It kind of comes down to, this is the way I was taught. I'm older, I'm more experienced. I'm the parent, so this is the way it works, and I'm bigger and stronger than you. And we don't always stop and think about, was that a good idea for us to have been taught that way? And can we do a little better? It kind of gets tied to how do you make a better world kind of thing. And that means we have to change. We have to not do things the way we were raised. Sometimes.
When I think
Not all the time, but
that
sometimes.
there's a level of awareness happening now that we're seeing adults turning out to be not what we thought we were teaching them to be. In that,
yeah, unintended consequences or something.
Right. And so we have adults running around with anxiety, depression, self-hatred, suicide rates are up, lack of confidence. Some would argue there's generations with too much confidence.
Yeah.
Entitlement, I think, is
good
what's
for you.
running around. So there's this like spectrum, right? And on one side of the spectrum is horrific, violent, traumatic, toxic, physical beating, etc., abuse, parenting. And on the other end of the spectrum is complete and utter leniency and let them do whatever they want and don't teach them anything.
Yeah. There's a bell curve, and we're kind of here.
And
not way out on the
somewhere in the
fringes.
middle is if we just are in healthy relationship with all beings, adults, children, etc., that means we know how to set healthy boundaries. That means we know ourselves well enough to know what our boundaries are. That means we let the world teach consequences, and we are the safe place for our child to mess up and to learn and to stand back up after they fall down and try again. And like, if you want a resilient kid, they have to have a safe place to fall down and get back up again.
A place to go to learn, a place to go to ask questions. You have to be regulated to teach them regulation.
And if you want a child who doesn't blindly follow whatever social media influencer, politician, whatever is blabbing in their ear all day, and to actually think for themselves, then you have to let your 3-year-old argue with you when they disagree.
That's right.
And you
have
can teach them. You can teach them to have a respectful argument, but you need to let them argue.
That's right.
You need to let them negotiate.
Yeah.
You need to let them do those things and teach them how to do those things correctly and respectfully.
You have to model it
so that they can become adult. Well, yeah, and you need to do it so they can become adults who think for themselves and have healthy conversations and talk through things and have friends and partners who are also healthy and have good conversations and are not
I don't know what that
manipulative.
looks like.
Yeah. And
how
who
to
to stay the hell away from.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy. I'm not sure I want to get hooked up too close with that one.
There's like all these, I don't know if it's trending or it's a buzzword or there's collective awareness of issues, societal issues or whatever. And one of those that I've seen a lot in the last couple of years is narcissism. And that word can get overused and applied to situations that it does not apply to, and et cetera, et cetera. But I have been with a narcissist, and I know other people who have escaped relationships with narcissists, and it took us way too long to figure it out.
Well,
and if we knew what those toxic, love bombing, behaviors looked like before it happened, we never would have gotten roped in and we would have run the other way. And
I don't know if there's a way to teach people to spot that. Maybe there is, by raising them
with
to
the
spot the
relationship
toxic
skills.
gaslighting and stuff, all that stuff.
I can look back now and take all these relationship skills and look back at that relationship and go, oh my God, how?
We would not have made it to the third date.
Second date. It was just so obvious now that I obviously know what I know now. But if we were teaching that to children, if we were raising everyone inside of this container of relationship skills, because relationship skills are life skills, and it's knowing, it's being able to identify manipulation. It's being able to identify and know that you don't deserve to be yelled at no matter what. You don't deserve to be abused no matter what. You don't deserve to have your boundaries crossed. If someone isn't listening to a boundary that you set with them, run.
What's that mean?
You don't need to be with them, right? And but as children, our parents have the run of the mill and we just have to deal with it. Yeah. And instead of being in this equal relationship where our voice is heard too, and our parents hear it and respect it and have a healthy conversation about it.
That's how you teach. Yeah.
Something as simple as I set out shoes for my preschooler to wear today, and they don't want to wear those shoes. Instead of being like, well, too bad you're wearing those shoes, you could be like, why? What shoes do you want to wear? And have a freaking conversation about it, because they might have a really good reason.
It's a form of choose your battle too. It's like, I'm not going to worry about the shoes. Their friends, if they're older, middle school or something like that, their friends will let them know when they're not in style. And unless it's going to cause frostbite, let them wear the sandals in the winter and figure out why we wear toes in the winter mostly, right. And it's snowy out.
Well, and it's
natural consequences.
There's also something I've run across is there are a lot of shoes that little kids, they're not comfortable.
Yeah, they hurt. Yeah.
And they don't know how to say that because they don't have those words yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they bring up that they don't want to wear those shoes, ask why.
That's right.
And I bet you'll eventually get to it, because they'll eventually be like, my toes hurt in those shoes.
Or if you don't have time to ask why and have a big discussion, just say, okay, what ones do you want to wear? There's a quick way out of that too. If you're harried, we'll pick them out. I also
would, and if it's snowy out and your kid's going to be out in the snow, there's maybe not every household has this option because you have one pair of snow appropriate shoes and that's it. But a lot of places and situations I've been in, there are multiple pairs of shoes that could work for that weather, and you lay those and you say, okay, you get to choose, but it has to be one of these because it's really cold outside, and these are the only shoes that are warm enough.
I don't want you walking home from the bus stop in wet feet.
So we're still giving choices.
Playing the parent card here a little bit, yeah.
Well, and even the phrase, I don't want you walking home from the bus stop in wet shoes, wet socks, means nothing to a kid.
That's true. It's too far off. Yeah.
So what, I'm going to ask you.
Where were you when I was raising kids?
How could you, I know, right? I was too little. So how could you rephrase that phrase to actually teach and mean something to a kid?
I'm afraid if you wear those shoes, your feet will get wet and hurt when you go outside. But just make an observation, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But
you can say, I'm afraid.
I'm afraid.
I would even leave that out of it. Because your feelings, as a fact. One, you're putting your feelings on the child.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't want your kid to be responding to your feelings. You want them to learn what could happen if they wear sandals in the snow. It's not about you being afraid. It's not about It's not about you at all. So we're framing
Right.
things because our ultimate, if you pull
It's about
everything
the
out
world.
from on top, you peel back all the layers. What we're trying to do is protect our child.
It's the world, from the world. How to get by in the world. We're just
And
communicating the world to them.
Right. And so in order to protect your child, all you need to do is teach them the pros and cons of their choices,
How to make choices, how to think
how to think about
critically
it
or whatever. Yeah.
and make a choice. And
I
so
did
you
that once,
go,
and boy, my toes about froze off one year. I got my feet wet. I wore sandals in the snow, and boy, was that cold.
yes.
That's kind of putting me in it again, though, too.
Well, but sharing in this situation, I would say that's not the best way to do it, but it is better than the initial phrase. There
I'm
are a lot of
afraid. Yeah.
situations with kids that using a story about yourself, about how you've felt what they're feeling before, to normalize it for them so they don't feel weird or shame about it is
Yeah.
totally viable and like excellent. Is in something as simple as a child who's picking their shoes and weather, I would just say, and you could even do a physical experiment with it, is
Let's go outside for a minute.
well, okay, if it's a jacket and your kid doesn't want to wear a jacket outside,
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm going to bring your jacket with us. Let's go play outside.
Bring
Give it 5
another
minutes.
pair of shoes. Yeah.
Give it 5 minutes, and they're gonna be like, "Can I have my jacket, please?"
An
Let them
object
feel
lesson.
cold.
I think that's an
let them
object
feel
lesson.
cold. They're
Yeah.
not going to die. We all know colds aren't actually caused by being out in the cold. So let your child go outside and feel cold. They will ask for a jacket.
Especially if it's a trip to a park. I like that because then you can do that on the fly. It's like, well, okay, you pick shoes. And then as you're walking, you grab appropriate shoes and coat and whatnot, and just if you can, just carry it with you, and then you're whipping out of your purse like a magician when they need it.
Yeah. And again, there's going to be like different situations and abilities to do that, and I can't carry all that shit and blah blah blah, and you're going to have to adjust this to your situation.
Yeah, you can't do that for 30 kids at school at once.
Right.
There's obvious limits. But
like you need to be able, like as a parent, you need to be able to, this is part of like self-regulation and knowing what each situation needs, is you need to be able to look at the situation and go, what's the next best step that causes no harm?
Yeah. And it's also, I feel obligated to throw in here too, there's no perfect. It's nice to have a chance to, life is very dynamic. These things are flying. You don't do this when a fire's going on. You grab them, pick them up, and carry them when there's actual danger. And you don't have to think of everything all the time. All you can do is do a little better. You try to be intentional, try to be thoughtful about how you're saying and what you're dealing, how you're dealing with the situation you're presented with. And it gets better with time. The more you do it, the better you get. And okay, this is now, instead of there's starving people, eat all your food, clean your plate, regardless of how much food I put on it, and your tummy and your emotional state, just I don't know, go with it. I lost my train of thought there. Instead of guilting or coercing, just see if there's a way to move through it and do a little better each time. And then by the time they're 25, they'll be wonderful people. You get them, you get the hang of it pretty quick, I think. It's starting to think before you knee-jerk react. Yeah,
and
this stuff I'll do.
Coach.
There you go. That's the best idea I've heard.
If you want to learn it faster and have a place to practice it regularly.
That's right. Or if you haven't seen any of it, doing it the hard way, just figuring it out on your own. That's tough if you've never seen it. In my family, there was an alcoholic, and I'd never seen alcoholism before, and he died. And I go, and now I see that, and I go, red flag in somebody, but I'd never seen it before, and so it goes by you until it's like crash, and you see it, whether it's a whatever unhealthy thing it is, some kind of addiction or emotional thing. And yeah, so there's no shame in watching it's a place to watch a YouTube video and pick up a few tips and like and subscribe and get to our Patreon page or whatever that turns into. Or there's somebody you can call and talk to for an hour about particular problems. Yeah. You go about it deliberately. Absolutely.
Yeah, because
Where was YouTube in the 80s?
I mean, it took me 20 years to figure all this stuff out for myself and learn it. And, I learned through my jobs and working with children, but I also learned through my own adult relationships and trial and error and what's healthy and what's toxic,
Sure.
and my own self-work and like the inner demons and bullshit I had to get over and heal, and
Undoing
my
things I did to
own
you. Your mother and I did to you.
well, and
Kinda.
even just like, my own, whether it was passed down through you guys or I was born with it as part of my personality thought processes. I don't know. Some of it I
Little of
know, some
both.
of it I don't have examples and memories for, so I don't know where it came from.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
dealing with your own bullshit and deciding not to be that person, and
Yeah,
and and not just thinking about it, but taking action. Like, your behavior in the world is what makes you who you are. And
that's right.
so, but what drives your behavior is what lives in here. And so you
Yeah.
have to fix what's in here before you can change out here.
Yep.
And so deciding to do that work and change your behavior, and I'm lucky enough to have been passionate about children for 20 years, and that's been my career and that's what I've been doing. And so I've learned these things prior to having my own, and I know that I'm still going to mess up and do things
Absolutely.
in a bad mood or in a bad phase of life, a
Or
hard,
in a
stressful,
hurry or yeah.
we're in a rush, we're late, like all of these things are going to happen, and I'm not going to be perfect at it either. But there's something to be said for the amount of time it can take if you're just doing this on your own and trying to figure it out as you go, versus intentionally taking time out of your schedule, putting it on the calendar to do
That's
your
right.
self work or to work with a parent coach or whatever it might be. Like, whether it's working with me or whatever modality you
Mhm.
choose,
Mhm.
the goal here is awareness. That's why I wanted to do the
Yep.
podcast, is so
Yep.
that more people had access to this information. And then to set aside, make an appointment with yourself or whatever, just like you would work or the gym or a phone call with a family member or whatever it is. Like, if you don't prioritize and make time for it, it won't happen.
Yep.
And so if you're just going along every situation with your kids and hoping you get better, you're not going to.
Yep.
You
It's
have
a
to
it's
do
a
it and
wish.
practice it and
There's
get
no
help if
action.
you need it. And
Yeah.
we all know change happens faster when you have someone holding you accountable for it.
Yeah.
So there's lots of options, but I just want to drive that point home of, like, you got to do it on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all. That's change. One of the words you used was change. If you want to change or improve or you grow, that's an action. That's not a wish. For that
Mm-hmm.
to happen, usually my experience is growth usually comes with some pain. People
Always.
don't usually change
Or maybe that's
until
just us.
it
We're
hurts
just,
too much not to. Yeah, we'll find out in the comments. I'm sure. I'm really anxious to see the
no.
comments, and I'll probably be a quivering bowl of jelly after I see them. But
Yeah. I'm not reading comments.
I'll
Someone else is
I'll
reading comments and sending
I'll
me the
filter them
topic
somehow.
requests.
We'll pay somebody if we get to that point. I wonder how much it costs to. It wouldn't be so bad if they weren't personal. I guess I
we're
could
far
filter somebody
too
else's comments.
we're far too sensitive.
Could be, yeah.
We're
That's
far
kind
too
of
sensitive.
one of our things. But you have to do something. Take a class. You have to study it. To me, it all comes down to education, the concept of education. There's people who haven't gone to college, didn't finish high school. That's what kindergarten up is, just exposure to new information and deliberately, going most days and doing a little bit of homework or some reading or something and wanting to improve, wanting to master something. And this is no different. You can study parenting while you're doing parenting. You can study math while you're doing math. It doesn't matter what your level is. It's just a different area to educate yourself in. Maybe you like to read the classics and you know a lot about fancy literature or whether or plumbing or welding or the technical trades are just whatever you do, you can study a little bit and think about how you want to do it and go about it more deliberately and get better at it.
Yeah.
People are eminently studyable. So yeah, just be deliberate about the time, spending a little bit of time. We're not talking about a lot of time. You're talking about taking 5% of your life or 2% and spending some time on an area that pays huge dividends. It compounds over time.
Yeah. Well, and parenting is just something we've always done evolutionarily. It just is.
Intuitively, yeah.
And but there is no formal education for it. There's no one is required, like math and science are requirements in high school, but parenting isn't. But
No manual.
more than half the population become parents. So it's like insane to me, knowing what I know now, that we are not, and there's also no standard on how to parent.
That's right.
And
Different
that's
cultures and yeah.
something else that I want to change. And the researchers who have been studying parenting for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they are discovering that there is a best practice.
There are
It's
some
not
best
just
practices.
personal,
I like
cultural, societal. Like there is a best practice that turns out healthy, functional, resilient, kind, happy people.
that. Yep.
And for the the majority of us are not doing it. And so without a formal without, it's just like anything else, what you want to go to college for, or people who don't want to go to college and want to go to trade school, or people who drop out of middle school and start working because their family needs them to,
Have
and then
to earn,
eventually
yeah.
figure out their passion, and then they take a class, or they go do, like you were saying, like you figure out what matters to you and you go do it and get better at it.
Yep.
And
Go to
if
the
you're
library.
a parent, like it should matter to you.
Ooh, there's a value judgment. It should, but I agree.
Well, because your children didn't choose to come into this world. Your children don't owe you anything.
I agree.
You chose to have children.
What are you raising
and so
kids
if
for?
being a good parent, why are you raising children?
There's kind of an assumption of, okay, I want to be good at this because it's so intuitive.
Well, there's the psychology of like having children for some not cool reasons, like there's like this self-image and reflection. There's having children
to take care of me when I'm
because
old,
you want or because you want love, and a child will love you.
That's right.
Or to keep a partnership together, to trap a partner, or like whatever it might be. There are lots of reasons people have children that are not
gain, or
because they want to be a guide for another spirit, a new spirit on earth, to make the world a better place. And that's just an unfortunate truth, and in our reality. But if you are a parent, an intentional parent, meaning that you had kids on purpose because you wanted to create a family and a happy home and all of these things, and continue your bloodline, etc., then being the best parent you can be, I'm going to say should. I normally don't use that word, but in this case, I'm gonna.
It would be nice. Yeah.
Being the best parent you can be for your child to make the world a better place and to have a happy, like if you want your child to be happy in their adulthood, being a good parent should be something you're working on.
There you go. It would be nice. It would be nice if they were to avoid the should. It would be nice for everybody. Nice for you, nice for the child, nice for the world if you studied it a little bit, got better at it, found some best practices, as opposed to, especially if what you know is beating and shame, and if your upbringing was horrible, damaged. Well, how's it go? Hurt people, kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. If you knew a lot of hurt, then it should. There I am doing it. You might want to think about undoing a couple of habits, that you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's and any improvement is a great boon to the world. That's the way it's going to get fixed. It's not going to, there's no fairy dust, there's no magic wand. It's just people learning different habits. And the more we can do, the more we can spread around. People don't want to be interfered. You can't look at that as failure. You just have to look at that as, hey, I'm working on being the best parent I can. And everybody's unique, coming from unique places, and so it's going to be a unique path. Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm anxious to see what feedback we get on this. See where we are under the bell curve.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's not going to happen. Perfection is not going to happen in one generation. We are,
Yeah,
you know, cycle breakers, generational cycle breakers, and
there you
every
go.
family, every culture passes down whatever the past family members have passed down, and you pass it down to your kids, and they pass it down to their kids, and
I
until
like that
someone
phrase.
breaks a
Yeah.
cycle, it's going to just keep going. And
Hmm.
there might be 20 cycles in your family line, and you've identified 10 of them, and you're going to break 10 of them, or 2 of them, or 15 of them. And it just
Yeah.
depends on which generation is made aware of what, and who is seeking the knowledge and the education to break the cycles, identify the cycles, and break the cycles.
Yeah.
And you don't have to put the world on your shoulders to fix everything in your short lifetime. But the more you break, the less your child is going to have to struggle with, and the
If
less
all you do
their
is
children are
one
going to
thing.
have to
Yeah.
struggle with. And
Yeah.
the closer and closer we get to living in a place that is abundant and joyful and fulfilling, instead of
Yeah. A little better to live
traumatic
in.
and
A little easier to live in. Something like that.
fear
What is the goal?
based.
Yeah.
And
Took a class, emotionally healthy relationships or something last year. And it was really interesting. I didn't know this existed, not genomics, genographing, something like that, where you
mm,
map your family, and then there's different kinds of lines between people, and who raised me and who did I have conflict with. And I forget the principles. I got to go back and look through that book and think about it, because there's a lot of that. It gave me some insight into my own family. It's
yeah.
like, aha, seeing it on, I guess that's different modes of learning or something. It's like, seeing it on a piece of paper. I'm in IT, in software, I'm used to dealing with boxes connected by lines and arrows, and it just kind of struck me seeing it written down as like, oh, you can here's a chart for this. And,
Mm,
there was an aha of, boy, somebody's got a tool for working with this. I was like, hey, that's snazzy. I never even thought of doing that. But it's good to learn.
yeah.
I wish I'd have had it in 1985 or so, before I started having kids.
Right. Yeah.
It probably existed, but I didn't see it. I'll have to go back and look when that stuff was invented.
Well, and it might have been a thought in someone's head and they wrote it down for the first time and, invented it. But you being exposed to it in the right place and time, and like, would you have been receptive to it in 1985 or would
That
you have been in
timing.
denial?
Yeah.
There's, everyone is developing and learning well after childhood. We are all developing and learning and capable of different things at different times in our lives. Like, I'm
Very good point.
34 and I've held multiple jobs, all generally in a similar arena, but I don't have 15 years at one workplace. And there's, my grandpa was a Methodist minister for 40 years. That's what he did. Right. And so
that happens less and less, I think.
Yeah. Well, but the point is, like, different people need different things and we learn different things differently, and our minds are open to and closed off to different things at different times in our lives based on our experiences and
very much,
et cetera. And so, like, if you're a 45-year-old parent hearing this shit for the first time and you've got young kids, or you're a 20-year-old parent hearing this stuff for the first time and you've got young kids, like, there's no one who's like, the 45-year-old isn't worse of a person than the 20-year-old simply because they've been exposed to something.
Didn't run into it then. Yeah.
Right. Like, because they weren't exposed to it or didn't run into it when they were 20 or weren't seeking it because they weren't a parent yet. Like, age is irrelevant. And I got off track of the point I was trying to make. The point is, we are all going to run into things when we're meant to run into them.
Yeah.
And when you run into something and you become aware of something that you weren't aware of before, your job from that point on isn't to look at the past and go, I wish. It's to It's to go, oh, I'm now aware of this, and this is what I'm going to do about it moving forward.
It's a blessing. It's an opportunity. Oh, here it is. Okay, let's see what this is, and there's probably some reason waiting for me to use this somewhere. There's a reason I ran into it now rather than 100 years ago, or the reason my parents didn't run into it or their parents didn't run it.
Right. Well, and there's stuff that you and mom
got
from your parents that I'm sure when you became parents, you were like, we're never going to do that to our kids.
We're never going to do that. We're never going to be like our parents.
Well, no, not in that sense, but I mean, like, there are things your parents did to you that you did not then do to us. So even if you were aware of it or like purposeful or not, there are things that you saw that your parents did to you and hurt you, and you didn't do it to us.
I think my parents were perfect. Can I be? Sarcasm probably doesn't translate into podcasts very good. Sorry.
No, I think it's good. I like it. It's the truth of who we are. So we've got to bring it in, right?
And you don't even know it. But, that's why it's good to have a coach. Be coachable,
well,
in everything.
If you guys, there was a time in my 20s.
Oh, tough time.
There was a lot of my 20s where I was resentful at varying times and varying years at varying stages of my therapy and realizations of where my stuff came from, and if it came from you or it came from mom. And
you did a good job on
but then there's integrating those things, and I get to choose. And you came from parenting that was even more dysfunctional or toxic, and you didn't do a lot of the things your parents did to you. And so there's like this appreciation for you taking the steps to break the cycle. But the point I'm actually trying to get to is that if you weren't the parents that you were, I would not be so passionate about what I am passionate about. And maybe I wouldn't have pursued what I have pursued and the knowledge and education and career that I have pursued. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, creating this relationship-based parenting model that I now plan to give to the world and to as many people as I can, and
Trying to make
teach
the world
it.
a better
And
place. Yeah.
right. And so if I had been raised in what, quote unquote, the perfect environment, I wouldn't be who and what I am today. And so,
Absolutely.
and that's, I don't want that to turn into an argument for parents to be like, well, if I was a perfect parent, my kid won't have a passion about anything when they grow up. Like, no, they
Probably
will.
not true.
And we need to make the world a better place. And we're also born, like, I came out of the womb loving children. That is innate in me. Nobody gave me that.
No, that's been plain since a young age.
Yeah, like people, mom, your adult friends who knew me back then, like everybody knows Jennie and kids go together like peanut butter and jelly.
You didn't have
And
any trouble finding babysitting gigs when you were of that age.
yeah, I mean, I
Nobody was
walk into
afraid
a
to leave you
room,
with their kids.
if there's a baby, like I will end up with it by the end of the night.
Mhm,
Like it will be mine.
Very kid-oriented.
Yeah, well, and kids are drawn to me, and there's, so that's my natural gift, and I would have found that no matter what, hopefully.
Hopefully.
But the passion and the drive that I feel to correct the injustice that I remember feeling in my childhood, that I remember working through in my 20s, and that I am now mostly on the other side of in my 30s,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
is
Which is
something
good
that,
because 'cause you're getting on the other side of it. Go ahead.
well, but it's what drove me to want to start coaching versus I'm just going to take care of kids for the rest of my
Yeah.
life and be a
It was a
mom.
struggle. It was a struggle, and you can make it easier sharing your struggle for other people.
And there's kids who are raised in super healthy relational homes. There are a few of them out there.
Mhm.
They still find their passion, and my argument is they find it a lot quicker
Yeah.
because because
They
they're
don't.
not dealing with trauma
Yeah.
and
Less
their own
distraction.
brain just trying
Yep.
to survive
Yep.
constantly. They're able to actually pursue their passions, become successful earlier, and build joyful, fulfilling lives faster than
Yep.
those of us who are starting families in our 30s.
They just go off, people who haven't had trauma, and I think the 30s is the right time to do it.
There is, so
If
I think the
there's a
latest
right time.
science,
There's some advantage to being a little older.
is that our brains are actually not fully developed until we're 28 years old.
25, 27, yeah, 28.
And it's the prefrontal cortex. Everything else is developed except the prefrontal cortex. Our
Mhm.
judgment centers are not fully
Mhm.
developed for 28 years.
Mhm.
And our brains continue growing throughout our whole lives.
Yep.
So, but your judgment zone is not fully developed until you're 28.
It's like driving. It
So,
takes a long time after you get your driver's license to be a good driver, because you have to be in all those situations
yeah,
and think through all those
right.
decisions, and it's complicated like parenting,
Yeah.
you
No, I was
know?
mostly just making a joke about starting a family in my 30s. I didn't
Yeah,
find
I know,
Lewis
I know.
till my 30s. So
Timing
I
again,
didn't want to have kids with anybody till I
you
found the
know?
right
Yeah,
person.
you valued it
And
too much.
it took me a while to find the right person.
Some people find themselves back to timing and fate and the universe. Some people find themselves having kids way before they intended to, before it was a conscious thing, but that's the situation, and there's still a good idea to make the best, do the best at it that you can with a little bit of
Yeah.
education and a little bit of talk, and let go of the, um, don't be defensive about things, and find somebody it resonates with and share some ideas, a group of friends or a coach or whatever. Be coachable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I
We,
just want to put this out there, like, when you keep using that phrase, be coachable, and it's such an important phrase because it's something I had to learn. I
in everything.
and well, I've had to learn, yeah, in everything. I've had to learn it, and I've done it. I've been in
Yep.
therapy for 8 years. I've hired coaches. I wouldn't be out here being like, I'm a coach, I can help you, unless one, I know what I'm talking about, and two,
Yeah.
I've done it.
Seen a little
So like
coaching,
I've
done a little
hired
coaching.
coaches.
Yeah.
I've reaped the rewards and the benefits and the faster growth and whatever from someone who's who's done it, someone
Yeah.
who's been in the trenches and learned it and is on the other side and sharing what they know. And I just, yeah, it's something I highly value in my own life. I have a coach right now. I have a business coach. Like I will continue to hire coaches according to what I'm working on in my life
Absolutely.
because I know I will get there so much faster than if I were
Yeah.
to just sit here in my office and spin about it in my own head or talk to my friends about it
That's
on the
right.
side and try to figure it out.
Yeah. Get out of the echo chamber. Imagine, I just had it flash in my head a picture of a football team trying to self-organize and play football. It's like, no, that's gonna get done a lot faster if there's
Yeah.
somebody saying, "Here's how you hold a football. Here's a better way to hold a football. Here's a better way to run. Yeah, you might want to put your helmet on for this." Yeah, somebody who's done it before and
Well, and I think
seen
like
some of it before.
therapy is a much more widely accepted notion nowadays, I feel like, than it was in the 80s or 90s or even early 2000s. It was kind of like oh, you're in therapy, you need help.
Especially in your generation, I think. I
And
still run into a lot of people that are like, "Ooh, ah," about that, but
well,
you
yeah,
guys seem to talk to one another
but
more
you were
about
the
more
ones that were
stuff.
ooh and ahhing at it in the 80s.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
but it's much more widely accepted in my generation, maybe some Gen X, but there's this notion of like, and this is part of the way we're raised too, of like there's shame in asking for help. There's
Exactly.
shame laid
Needing help.
on people and children who don't fit the standard mold or who can't fake it to fit into the standard mold long enough to get through public
Yep.
school or
Yep.
whatever. And
Yep.
like people learn different ways, and we all like there is no one who gets through life without help from somebody.
There's no
Nobody.
shame in not having seen a situation. You have kids and you don't know what kind of learning challenges they're going to have or what physical challenges, whatever, and we haven't seen them all either. We have our little bubble of experience, but there's no shame in saying, like with the alcoholism or toxic relationships, there's no shame in not having run across something before and going, I don't know exactly how to deal with this. I should try, maybe ask around and see if anybody's seen this and get a couple of tips, to make it go a little better. Not that it's going to fix anything, but cast about for some information.
Well, and yeah, well, but and there's this shame of like people don't reach out. They don't do that because they were brought up to figure things out for yourself, and
Rugged
you're
individuals.
dumb
And
if you don't if you can't approach a new situation and figure it out. Like
yeah,
that's not human. That's not how we operate. We come out of the womb completely helpless,
yeah,
and the point of parents is to guide and teach. And I don't know, there's many people I know who parenting doesn't stop at 18. Like that's just when the government has decided you're an adult. That doesn't mean
yeah,
anything in the reality
yeah.
of the timeline of
Wonder where
learning.
that came from. Yeah.
And it's but it's deeply
Hmm.
embedded in our foundation and the shame and our
It is.
DNA and however it's passed down and taught retaught and over and over again of asking for help is shameful, and it means that
Independence.
there's something wrong with you.
if you
inherently
need
wrong with
help.
you if you need
Yeah.
help. But the reality is we all need help. We can't all do everything all day, every single day. Nobody can. Like, there's a man or a woman who comes and picks up my trash every week because I don't have time to drive it 50 miles outside the city and dump it. Like, I can't cook
Or it's
every single
legal. Yeah.
day, or I don't have time to like clean my entire house all of the time. Like, everybody needs help in whatever ways that we need help. And
It's kind of a tribe thing. You're better part of a
yeah,
group,
we weren't meant
you know?
to live these like lonely, isolated lives. And wherever that started, this like hyper independence, and I've even heard it from older generations who believe in tribal stuff, and they think that the newer generations are way too self-involved and independent,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then they shame you for seeking help.
For
And it's
having a
like,
tribe. Yeah.
which is it?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to rely on other people for stuff and ask for help, or do I need to be toxically independent?
I
And which
think
one
this is
are
being
you
a
going to judge me for? Like,
yeah, this is my tribe. What's wrong with having a tribe, you know? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's healthy, use that word, to share ideas and get better at things, especially something as important as child rearing, and value instilling. And, make sure you've thought through your values and make sure you've thought through, we also touched on sometimes we do what we know, and maybe that's not, maybe that has unintended consequences, and maybe it's good to discuss that stuff once in a while and get a
Well, that's what you
hear
and I are
another
doing.
opinion.
We're
Yeah,
looking at, that was one of the goals here, is to be able to look at the different facets and different sides, the pros and cons
exactly.
and whatever of all of these issues, to be able to talk out
Yeah,
loud about how that could be helpful or how that could be
yeah.
harmful, or because
And aspects of child rearing.
it's not happening in our communities, and nobody's got time for it. It's not like, oh, we're not going to the coffee shop with our friends and just blowing off our jobs and having time to do things. Like, we're not naturally in
Yeah,
those situations where like we're all living separate lives.
yeah.
We all live
We
very
are.
separate lives. We have different jobs and cars and houses, and we have different schedules, and our little family unit
Yeah.
has their responsibilities and stuff. And each family unit has all their own stuff. And so we're like living in the vicinity of each other, but we're completely separated. And
You don't know
I've
your neighbor, but
actually,
you know people across the planet.
yeah, and I've
Superficially,
actually
kind of. Yeah.
always been a little jealous of cultures and families who live together,
Yeah.
uh, who they all house together pretty much their whole lives until the older children move out and start having their own children, and maybe even sometimes they're in and out, move back in, move out, or whatever, and have their own house. And I know that a lot of that was because of socioeconomic need, and
Sure.
it's not like a glamorous thing to aspire to, and I don't want to be ignorant of that, but I also see that, and it can be complicated and loud and noisy and busy and whatever, but there's also an element of tribe to that, and like we're
Yeah.
together, and if somebody there's 7 or 8 adults who can cook instead of just 1 or 2 in the house trying to handle everything and cook
Take
healthy
turns.
meals
Yeah. Yeah.
and get the kids everywhere and earn money. And like, if I could have a castle and have all of
Queen
my
Jennifer.
friends and family live together, but also, yeah, I mean, I value my space,
Yeah.
and I'm an
Yeah.
introvert, but like, I just need a bedroom for that. So it's like,
Yeah.
if I could live in a big castle and move all my family and friends into it, and we would all live together and work the land and raise the cows and ride the horses and do the things, and there's multiple people going out to work jobs, and there's multiple people at home taking care of kids, and there's multiple, like, there's shared labor and community and constant interaction. Like they've shown again in the most recent studies, connection and
Yeah.
relationship and having
There
a
you go.
community is the number one determining factor in longevity,
Yeah.
in a healthy
Interesting.
length of life.
Huh.
Active community, like being in contact with and being in relationship with people on a daily, weekly, regular basis. And that's why
Okay.
they've shown that, like, the elderly who get secluded in their homes and they just have a
Yeah.
nurse visit every once in a while.
Isolation after divorce for guys. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. All kinds of
depression,
unhealthy
all the
stuff.
things.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, I've always loved that concept, and you know, have dreams about creating a community or sharing a plot of land and farming it and raising meat and animals and having shared resources and community and
That's an old model.
big
That's a
family
reason.
dinners and
Yeah.
chaos and
Con-
excitement and
connection.
yeah.
Disruption. It's going to be interesting. The longevity thing is this. We're in the internet is partly about communities. There's only two people that like to collect purple clown heads or something, and if there can be six of them on the planet, and they can get together through the internet. That was one of
Yeah.
the. You can have so that's a kind of community. So is having your family grow up around 500 acres and everybody works the family farm, like, or a plot of land, like has been going on for however many thousands of years. It's going to be interesting to see. Well, and so getting within a family unit, there's habits and, passed along sayings and all kinds of things. It's going to be interesting to watch and learn. Um, through this podcast how this affects community. Can you have a community of people all trying to get better at parenting or pick up a tip here and there, or it beats watching TikTok dances, or here's something a little more productive in my humble opinion. And how that community affects people. um, what kind of community can you have online? And then, of course, with you, there's always, here's a phone number and talk and face. You get sort of kind of FaceTime with a computer and get to know people to an extent online. It's going to be interesting. It's an extension, a modification of community. What's going on here? It's going to be very interesting to see in 100 years.
All right. Well, I think we've gone off topic far enough.
Yeah, we have. I'm sorry.
That's not. We both
I
did. Don't apologize.
I have to do that.
Well, everything is connected. It's going to happen. It's going to happen every episode. So if you're someone who demands linear thought in your episode, then your podcasts, then this may not be for you.
You're going to have to wait till we get a little more practice at staying on point.
I don't know that we ever will. We've been talking to each other for 34 years. So
it rambles a little.
But I think it's helpful. I think that it's a normal, especially in parenting, it's such a daily thing that it's like, if I do that, then it's going to do this. And if we do this, then it's going to do that. And it's
where do I find the time?
Having kids is not linear. So it's your thoughts as a parent. You're like, am I causing shame and guilt? Well, what if I do this? Well, then am I letting them get away with stuff? And then what about this? And there's you ping-ponging on the spectrum back and forth constantly.
Don't micromanage yourself. Yeah.
I think talking through these things and seeing how they're all connected to different things and all of that, I think it's fine. But we should probably end it. We're well over our 60 minutes.
Oh my goodness, that went fast.
But yeah, this was fun, and we'll see you all next time. If someone came to mind while you were listening to this episode, or you are wishing you had a friend to digest it with, I would be so honored if you shared this link from this episode with them. I myself have always benefited from community and sharing, and I truly believe that it takes a village to raise a child. Our society has become so independent from one another, and parenting these days is often a lonely journey. But it doesn't have to be that way. That's why I'm here. If you have been seeking a more intentional approach to parenting, but you aren't sure where to start, I would love to hear from you. You can find me and all of my offerings at www.jennieb.co and come follow me on all major social media platforms. It fills my heart to hear your stories, where you come from, and your big goals for raising the next generation. And don't forget, comment your parenting question on our YouTube channel, the Relational Parenting Podcast, to get it answered on one of our future episodes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss out. I am so grateful that you are here. And always remember, you are never alone. I'll see you next week. This show is intended for education and entertainment purposes only. We will discuss things like mental health, abuse, PTSD, and other potentially triggering subjects. Please listen at your own discretion, and this podcast is not intended for anyone under the age of 18.